Thank you, Gary. Always enjoy Gary when he sings. He sings the oldies but the goodies. You have your Bibles tonight, 16th chapter of the book bearing the prophet's name, Ezekiel. And tonight we want to look at verse 49 and 50 in a sermon series we began last week. We're talking about the sins of Sodom. The sins of Sodom. If I was to ask you about the sins of Sodom, you'd say, Pastor, it's not plural, it's singular, it's only one. I beg to differ with you. I beg to differ with you. Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 49 and 50. The prophet writing about Sodom, her daughter Gomorrah, although it's not mentioned as such. And he talks about the problem that God had with them before judgment came against them. God is gracious, He's merciful. But if you keep saying no to Him as a nation, no to Him as a church, no to Him as a family, no to Him as an individual, He will bring judgment. He prefers grace. He prefers mercy. He prefers forgiveness, cleansing. He prefers in making things whole, giving things a new start, a fresh beginning. But if we in our stubbornness tell Him no, 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 there is a no that goes past the point of no return, and judgment will come. Verse 49 and 50. Ezekiel says, look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter Gomorrah were filled with pride, the fullness of food, the abundance of idleness. Neither did they strengthen the hand of the poor or the needy. They were haughty, committed sexual abominations, perversions before the Lord. Therefore I took them away. I destroyed them as I saw fit, said the Lord. Sodom's sin, Ezekiel gives us all 6 of them. Last week we looked at pride. Tonight we're going to look at gluttony. And you might be asking yourself, and it's a good question to ask, Pastor, I didn't think gluttony's a big deal. Why would God judge a nation? Why would God judge a people? Because they practice the sin of gluttony. Well, I'm going to show you tonight why. But before we do that, I want to take you back to 1912. The great ocean liner Titanic is making its debut voyage. It was called the unsinkable ship by many people. The Titanic is in the North Atlantic, full speed ahead, when all of a sudden it hits an iceberg. An iceberg that rips out the side of the Titanic. The boat goes down very quickly from the gash, and it takes 1,500 passengers to a watery grave. For over 80 years, it was believed that one major rip in the Titanic from that iceberg, that one major rip in the side of the Titanic from that visible but mostly invisible iceberg, is what sank that great vessel. One rip and it was done. Using basketball terminology, one and done. One rip and it's over. But in 1993, a group of scientists actually went to the bottom of the deep, dark abyss of the Atlantic Ocean where the Titanic laid in bits and pieces scattered over hundreds of yards. And through a lot of research that only scientists can do, using equipment that the average person has no access to, they discovered something very unusual. That what men had believed for 80 years concerning the sinking of the Titanic was wrong. It wasn't one major rip that sunk that great vessel. It did have a major rip. But what actually sunk the vessel was 5 other minor rips. Each one that ripped through a waterproof apartment, a waterproof room. And it was the 5 minor rips that actually sunk the Titanic, not the major one. In fact, scientists said that if it was only one major rip, that boat would have stayed afloat, and life could have been preserved, and life could have been saved. Now, why do I tell you that? Because in relation to Sodom and its daughter Gomorrah, it's long been believed that it was one major sin, just one major sin, sexual abomination, sexual perversion. Only one major sin that did that city in. But no, it wasn't. There was actually a total of 6 sins that broke the camel's back of Gomorrah, of Sodom, and brought the hand of God's judgment down to obliterate it all. Many sins brought the destruction of God. And we're looking at those sins. As I said last week, we looked at pride. Pride is perhaps the most hideous, dangerous sin there is in the Bible. And primarily because those who have it don't know it. How many of you are prideful over here? Raise your hand. Got one in the back. One honest man. How many are prideful over here? Over here. See, those who are prideful are usually the last ones to know it. Pride is invisible. It can't always be seen by the one who has it. But it's clearly seen by those who don't. Pride. That was the first minor sin, if you will, that ripped a hole in the SS Sodom. But there's another minor sin that's about to rip a second hole in the SS Sodom. It's the sin of gluttony. Now, if you have your Bible, let's read again our verses. Let's see what it says. She and her daughter, the daughter of Sodom is again Gomorrah, twin cities. She and her daughter, her other city, they had pride. We talked about that last week. The fullness of food. Now pay attention to that. The fullness of food. The abundance of idleness. Neither did they strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. They were haughty, which is a greater degree of pride, and committed abomination before me. Gluttony. If you have a King James Bible, you don't see gluttony there. What you see is the fullness of bread. If you have the New King James Bible, you see the fullness of food. If you have the HSCB, you read plenty of food with comfortable security. If you have the NIV, it says overfed with comfort. Many different translations, but looking them all up, they all take us back to a Hebrew word that literally means gluttony. Now, gluttony has a twofold meaning in the Word of God. You got your ears on. This is important. Gluttony in the Bible has a twofold meaning. Okay? And gluttony was one of the sins that brought the judgment of God on Sodom. One of the sins that ripped the side of the SS Sodom. Now, we generally think of gluttony as definition number 1. And that meaning is gluttony is related to food. In fact, some of the translations that I just told you, they make reference to food. So gluttony can be, definition number 1, can be a word that is associated with food, associated with overeating. They say that the calories for a grown man per day, average grown man, is 2,000 calories a day. The average need of a woman, average woman, is around 1,800 calories a day. Now, sometimes I'll get all of mine in one meal, and then I borrow from the next day. I'm already into April of this year, borrowing. But gluttony is often related to food, and it's related to overeating. According to one nutritionist, you're considered a glutton, an overeater, if you double how many calories you're supposed to have in a day. So men, if you're eating more than 4,000 calories, you are practicing gluttony. Ladies, if you are eating more than 3,600 calories a day, you are practicing gluttony. But gluttony, its first definition, ears on, is always related to food, and it talks about overeating. That's a word that goes with the gluttony. Also, non-stop eating is considered gluttony. Some of us eat to live, others of us live to eat. And some of us, we get up in the morning and have breakfast, but after we're through with breakfast, immediately we follow with lunch. And then after lunch, we immediately follow with supper or dinner. We get up in the morning eating, we go through the day eating, we go to bed eating. And we're munching on at night before we fall asleep. So gluttony can be overeating, eating more than you need. It can also be non-stop eating. You get up eating, you go through the day eating, you go to bed eating. It can also mean wrongful eating. Gluttony can be associated not only with eating too much, but eating too much of the wrong thing. You say, Pastor, what are you talking about? I'm talking about grease. I'm talking about salt. I'm talking about sugar. I'm talking about fat. I'm talking about all those things that taste good to you and I. Gluttony can also be talking about destructive eating. Do you know that gluttony can be destructive when you overeat? How, you say? Because it can destroy relationships. Gluttony can destroy relationships. When your spouse has put on 600 extra pounds, it can destroy a relationship. I'm being a little facetious. I don't know that they'd put on 600, but maybe they would. Destructive relationships can come out of gluttony. Health issues can come out of gluttony. Esteem issues can come out of gluttony. When you look at yourself in the mirror and you're far, far, far overweight, it can affect what you think about yourself. Addictive eating is also associated with gluttony. Hooked on food. Not hooked on nicotine, not hooked on marijuana, not hooked on heroin, hooked on food. Controlled by appetite, controlled by craving, that's just as strong as an addiction as other addictions are. Now, all of this definition I just give you of gluttony, overeating, non-stop eating, wrongful eating, destructive eating, all of this stuff will kill you. It will take you to heaven early, but it won't keep you out of heaven. Gluttony will take you to heaven early, but the kind of gluttony I just talked to you about, it will not keep you out of heaven. Yes, it's a sin, I guess, in some ways, but the Bible really doesn't say much about it. The writer of Proverbs mentions it 3 times. It's mentioned a couple of other times in other places. It's not a big deal to God in the sense of sin. And whether it's a sin or not, I don't know. But I know this: it will kill you. It will kill you. It will kill those you love. Don't let it happen to you. So gluttony can mean overindulgence when it comes to eating. It can mean eating like pigs. I'm not sure if it's a sin or not. If it is, God doesn't make a big deal about it. There's no "thou shalt not practice gluttony" in the Bible. Thinking about pigs, eating like pigs, I remember the story about a little boy who was eating spaghetti at his table one night. His dad was next to him, and he had a big bowl of spaghetti, and he was going... I mean, he was making all kinds of noises as he was shoveling the spaghetti in his mouth. And his daddy said, "Stop eating like a pig." And he said, "Yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir." And he started snorting again, sucking the spaghetti in again. And the dad said, "Son, I told you to stop eating like a pig." He said, "Yes, sir, I heard you." And then back to doing it again. I mean, he's covered in spaghetti because he's just shoveling it in. And the dad said, "Listen, I told you to stop eating like a pig. Don't you know what a pig is?" He said, "Yes, sir, it's the son of a hog." Gluttony. What is it? An overindulgence of food to the point that it can become destructive and take you to the grave early. Now, that's not what the Lord was talking about when He says to the Sodomites. That's not what Ezekiel is talking about when he says in verse 49, "She had pride, and she had the fullness of food, the fullness of bread. She was overfed and comfortable. She was excessive in her eating and secure in what she had." All of those phrases speak of gluttony, but it doesn't speak of the gluttony we just talked about and laughed about. It speaks of the second definition of gluttony. And that second meaning of gluttony is what ripped the side out of the USS Sodom and brought the judgment of God upon them. What is the second meaning of gluttony? It means to be self-absorbed with stuff at the expense of God and at the expense of others. To be self-absorbed with stuff. Your life is lived for stuff. You worship stuff. You work for stuff. You want stuff. Your life is about stuff. Not about God and not about anybody else. No vertical thought, no horizontal thought. The thought is this way right here. Gluttony is not just about food, ladies and gentlemen. It's about our attitude and our actions toward stuff. Do you know that many people are gluttons when it comes to money? The first definition talks about gluttony with food. But do you know there's a gluttony with money? A self-absorption about money? Making it, spending it, hoarding it, keeping it. Somebody has said it like this: making all you can, canning all you make, sitting on the lid, not letting anybody else have any. Do you know some people are self-absorbed with money? They spend their entire life making it, spending it, hoarding it, keeping it. If they could, when they went into the casket, they would have money bags with them. Their gluttony, their overindulgence, their cravings, their gorgings is not food. It's money. And the Sodomites were self-absorbed with money. That was their life. That was their God. And it's some of yours, maybe. Also, you can be self-absorbed with stuff, with things. Do you know that can be gluttony too? Got to have the latest. Got to have the most. Got to have a bigger house. And once I get that bigger house, I need a bigger house. And once I get that house, I need a bigger house. Or I need a vacation house. I need a house on the lake. I need a house in the mountains. Self-absorbed with stuff. I need cars. I need an old car. I need a new car. I need a family car. I need a me car. Self-absorbed with jewelry. Not satisfied with that little diamond I got when I got married. Got to have a bigger one. Got to have a bigger one. Got to have a bigger one. Got to have gold. Got to have silver. Got to have rubies. Got to have sapphires. Got to have a diamond. No, I got to have a black diamond. Silver and gold. Got to have it. Clothes and shoes. Got to have them. Memorabilia, got to have it. Furniture, got to stay young. Got to have some face work. You see, you can be a glutton for money. You can be a glutton for stuff. So self-absorbed with things, you have no time for God, and you got no time for nobody else either. Because life is all about money and life is all about stuff, isn't it? David Rockefeller was asked many years ago in regard to money and stuff, if he could have one more thing, what would he want? Now this is a man who had millions. And he paused a moment. And you know what he said? If I could have anything, I would like to have one more dollar. See, that's self-absorption with stuff, with money. Never satisfied. Never will be satisfied. I need more. I need better. I need now. I need later. Self-absorbed with pleasure. You know, many people are gluttons for the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. Self-absorbed with pleasure. They like to live close to the edge of death. You know people like that? They get on a motorcycle and get on the interstate and they're doing 110 miles an hour. They get behind a wheel and they turn into a monster. Nobody's going to stay ahead of them. They're so self-absorbed with wanting a thrill. And they keep upping the ante to get the same thrill. Sexual expression brings them pleasure. But when you do sexual pleasure wrongfully and unbiblically, it will never satisfy. And therefore you got to keep pushing the envelope to get the same pleasure that you once got. the applause of an audience, name and lights. We've seen it all before. The gluttony of pleasure, the gluttony of stuff, the gluttony of money, the self-absorption that this is all my life is about. I don't care about God. I don't care about people around me who are hurting and suffering. I don't care. It's an extension of pride, isn't it? It's all about me. And this type of gluttony that I'm just describing to you was the sin of Sodom. They had total concern for only one person, and that person was themselves. They were wealthy, but they didn't care about the poor. They were well fed. They didn't care about the hungry. They had access to doctors and medicine. They didn't care about the sick. They lived in fancy houses, and they had several of them. They didn't care about the homeless. They had clothes that were designer made. They didn't care about the naked. They had degrees on the wall from the finest schools. They didn't care about the uneducated. They wasted everything on themselves. Money was theirs to waste if they wanted to. Stuff was theirs to waste. Pleasure was theirs to burn. It didn't matter about nobody else, that way or this way. I don't know if Marie Antoinette said it, but she said during the French Revolution, when she heard about the peasants revolting, her comment to it was, "Let them eat cake." I don't care about them. I don't care about those peons, those peasants. Let them eat cake. Let them have the crumbs. I'm royalty and I deserve what I got, and I'm keeping it. I'm not giving it to them. Of course, that attitude was destructive, wasn't it? She would later have her head taken off by a guillotine. Ted Turner, he's quoted as saying, "The person who dies with the most toys and stuff wins." The one who has the most stuff at the end of the life, the one who has the most toys at the end of life, they're the ones who go into eternity winners. Really? I don't think so. Close with the story of a man. He was our nation's first billionaire. Not thousandaire. Is that a word, thousandaire? It is now. He wasn't a thousandaire. He wasn't a millionaire. He was our nation's first billionaire. At age 50, he was the richest man in this country and one of the top 2 richest men in the world. He was a billionaire. And everything he did was about adding to the billions of dollars he had. Everything he did was about accumulating the stuff, the materials, the toys that his money would allow him to obtain. He thought about every waking moment according to his own testimony. My mind was consumed from sunup to sundown and every hour in between with getting more. I need more money. I need more things. I need more stuff. I need more this. I need more that. How can I get more? And this is a billionaire. At age 53, something happened. This 53-year-old billionaire who accumulated through gluttony, money, stuff, pleasure, became sick. The finest medical doctors in the world examined him, treated him, but they couldn't help him. He was sick. He was filled with pain every waking moment since the sickness came upon him. He was so sick that he was bedridden for most of the hours of every day. His hair started falling out. His stomach couldn't hold food. This man could buy caviar, filet mignon, tuna. He could buy anything, but yet he couldn't eat it because his stomach wouldn't hold it. So he was now on skim milk and crackers. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't smile anymore. The smirk was taken off his face by sickness. He was told by the doctors that he was going to die. Prepare to die. There's nothing we can do for you. We don't even know what's wrong with you. We have no explanation for what your body is going through. About 3 weeks out from the day that the doctor said he would probably die in that proximity, this man had a dream. I don't know what you think about dreams, but he had a dream. And in that dream, he dreamed two things that were very vivid to him. That when death came, in the dream, when death came, he would be put into a casket. He would be put into a hearse. He'd be taken to the cemetery. And his money wouldn't go with him. His stuff, his toys, wouldn't go with him. The pleasure wouldn't go with him. At death, he would be no different than anybody else. In the box, in the hearse, to the cemetery, into the ground. That's what the dream said to him. Also, the dream said something else to him. The dream showed him that the rich man with billions, the poor man with nothing, they all go to the same place. In fact, they might be buried side by side with one another. Things aren't always equal in this life. But when you're laid into the ground, everything's equal there. This man had that dream, and it shook him. And he got to thinking about it. He said, if I only got a few months to live, a few weeks to live, I've got to change my whole attitude, my whole perspective. So he established a foundation that bears his name. And he told that foundation, I've given you as much money as you need. Money's no object. Take this money and create a drug that can help people overcome sickness. And from that gift he gave to his foundation, penicillin came out, which is a life-saving drug. It was in that day, and it's still used today. From his foundation and the money he gave that foundation from that dream, he came up with a cure for malaria, TB, cholera, diphtheria, and smallpox. That foundation became a wellspring for finding cures for diseases that were taking the lives of hundreds and thousands of people every year. Something interesting occurred. The more this man gave away his billions, the more he gave away his stuff, his toys, the more he gave up his bizarre, extreme, oftentimes sinful pleasures, the better he began to feel. All of a sudden he could sleep at night. All of a sudden his stomach allowed him to eat. All of a sudden his hair started coming back. His color started coming back on his face. His strength started being restored. The doctor said, we don't even know what's going on. We didn't know what caused it the first time. We certainly don't know what's going on here. And this man, who was told he would be dead at 53, he lived to be 98 years old. And he attributes it until the day he died to a change of mind and a change of heart, to a change of his whole person. How he looked at money, stuff, and pleasure. No longer was it about him. It was to him. And it was to him. By the way, that man's name was John Rockefeller. Money and things are not sinful unless we make them our God and use them only on ourselves. Did you hear me as I close? Money in and of itself is not sinful. If you are a person with money and means, thank God that you have it. But acknowledge who gave it to you and use it for His glory and for the good of your fellow man. But money and things are not sinful unless we make them sinful by making them our God and spending 24/7 of our life just getting more and more and more and more and never thinking about the kingdom for which it came and the people around us who have glaring need. It's when we have and we won't use it the right way that God gets angry. I just wonder if God's not angry with America. I don't know about you, but I'm going to close and I'm going to be on a soapbox for just a second. It bothers me greatly. It irritates me greatly. It gets me angry at what it does. To see our veterans have to come on television and beg for $19 a month that they might have medical treatment to help them recover from their wounds in serving our country for the cause of freedom. Our country can't take care of them. We have to beg $19 out of people to help take care of them. We have to beg to give them a house to live in that allows them to have disabilities to be able to function like a person. We have to beg for little boys and girls who are at hospitals needing limbs, needing this, needing that. And our government won't take care of them, won't give them a dime to help them. But they throw away hundreds of thousands of millions of billions of dollars on nonsense. And we can't take care of little boys and little girls born with disabilities. We can't take care of veterans who are disabled from service in this country. We can't take care of medical care for people who have great need. We can't come up with a cure for cancer. We waste our money on stuff that angers God and does nothing for the need that is around us. If our government just gave half of what it wasted to what I just mentioned, and I could go on with more and more and more programs, this nation would be far better off. So what was Sodom's sin? It was the fullness of bread. What's that mean, Pastor? It means gluttony. God was angry with them for food? He was angry with them for being self-absorbed in another type of gluttony. Money, things, and pleasure. To he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying tonight. Heads are bowed and eyes are closed.